All right, what are we working on today? We're working on Fuse. Fuse is a automation monitoring toolkit. Basically, the same thing I've been building my entire career, but we're going to get AI integrated into this, and it is going to do more and more. Um, so, so anyway, what we're working on now is patching. So when we make, I do have this running in production environments. I don't want to wipe things out. There are a lot of fixes that I want to make before I kind of do a general release of this. You can run it now, however, but that doesn't mean some data won't get wiped out. Like I think I wiped out sensor data last week. Not a big deal. It took a copy of the sensor history and it just rebuilt the sensors, but I needed to change some data types and it had ID columns and multiple tables. It was just going to be really hard to write a conversion. I'm not just was just wasn't interested in doing it. It's not that important. I don't really look at sensor history too much with most of our customers. I've got some custom sensors that I might need to go back and say, hey, this sensor was triggered this many times in the past. So I have that history if I need it. So that says you can run this, wherever you think so you need to, and but we do try to patch in such a way that we don't wipe things out. So I haven't really done any versioning, and I've tried that in the past and not been super uh, liked it that much. So we're trying to use tools we have. So here's what we're doing. We've got two patch files. So when I make a change, I try to write a patch so that everything's idempotent. You can run the app install and you get what you need. I've had these various statements in here. And so you can call drop procedure 1,000 times. It doesn't error out once this procedure is dropped. So there's really no harm in just calling this. But I'm doing a more, I've got a patch stat table in this one that I'm going to be creating. Well, actually, I'm going to get rid of the procedure, but we're adding a column to the stat table called stat source. So we were just calling it like database stats for a bunch of this stuff, but I want to get a little bit more specific. Usually I can identify what the stats are based on this stat name and the stat and the stat group, but which would be database stats or something like that. But we want to add this stat source and be a little more specific, and that's where we're like saying, these stats are coming from GV dollar sysstat, SGA stat, system event, weight stat, and so we want to do this. So we've added the column already in the app schema file to the original create statement, and we've added a check to see if the column exists. If it doesn't, it adds it, and we want to run this. We really only want to run this one time. We don't want to keep running it over and over, and you could check every time for all these counts, but we want to just run it once and be done with it. So what we're doing, we're kind of doing, at the top of our file, we're going to go ahead and add a number parameter called, and I'm going to put an underscore in it to kind of, if you look at the the config underscore table, which has a lot of configuration values in it, then anything that's underscore is kind of internal. That's kind of a common way of doing things and saying this is an internal thing. Don't mess with this, ideally. And in theory, we could always set this back to 0 and rerun all the patches, and they would get rerun. So makes it easy to rerun. It's kind of a flag. So we're gonna add this, and it's gonna be set to 0, and then this is gonna come along, and if it's 0, we're gonna run all this, and then we're gonna set it to 1. So next time it runs, obviously it'll be 1 or some other number, and it won't work. So this is the same thing here. We want to just go ahead and change this to an anonymous block. And now I could write this any big if then else, but don't think I want to do that. I think I can do return. Can I do a return? I can do a return, right? So we're going to do it. Actually, we don't even need the declare, do we? Ooh. Okay, so we're going to say if app config.get paramnum post app version equals is, so we're going to say if this is not equal, this is where AI gets in the way sometimes. appconfig.get param uh-oh, I think I just turned it off. Why is it not giving me? Let's disable. I actually do want it on. All right. Well, let's cut and paste. Okay, so if this is equal, if it's not equal to 1, then return, and if I think return works, and do we need, yeah, that's all right, begin, and we don't need that anymore. Okay, so I think that'll work. We can try to run this. See if it complains. It doesn't like commit. Yeah, it doesn't like that. N must be declared. Yeah, we do need an N, so let's add that. vstat group. Select count, where, we don't need vstat group, we need a stat group. And that worked. Okay, and it shouldn't have run, of course, because if I run this, it should basically return null. Since we're not setting a default. Yeah, no. Now you can set it, you can say I want a default. I could say like that, and then it returns a default, which is nice. So this is for setting configuration values. So if you create a custom alert, which is just a view, or you create a sensor, which is just a view, or you create stats, you can set in those views, you can add parameters, which can be then configured either manually or dynamically in your code by checking the environment type, which is one of the parameters available, and saying, you know, for non-prod this or prod that, you could do all kinds of things. So it's really configurable, and it's super easy for you to create configuration values for your custom stuff and maintain it, and maintain it across a lot of different systems from a single central repository. So we want to make it super easy to manage your alerting and your sensors and all that. I find most of the products I use, it's too complicated, and we want simplicity. So now I have, you're watching this on YouTube, because I'm going to go back to posting on YouTube mainly just because I seem to get more views than just posting into Twitter. But on my Twitter feed, you will find some other short videos and stuff if you want to get into doing development or deploying Fuse into some environments. I highly encourage you to become an expert on Fuse before you try to deploy it anywhere. But it basically installs and runs and does all kinds of cool stuff out of the box. There's always the risk that some of the statements it runs are going to be expensive. You should, you know, monitor and figure that out real fast and see if there's a way to optimize anything. I know there's a couple function calls. They're a little bit expensive, but I've optimized them to the point where I'm rarely a top SQL in any database. Any of the SQL here is rarely a top SQL. It might be across the week on a slow database because it is kind of monitoring 24/7, but it's not impacting anything that that I manage. And I have this running on at least, I don't know, 20, 30 databases. Okay. So let's go ahead and cut and paste that back in. And that should be good. I want to test this just before I run it. So let's just say if n equals 9 there, just to, and actually let's do the same thing. Actually, let's change this. I like the exit early up top because we can see what's going on. I don't want to use the if then else block around all that. So this is a lot cleaner in my opinion. So if this is not equal to 0, okay, then return. And then I'm not passing a default in, but we'll say 9. Just so it doesn't run, go paste it over here. And of course, I got errors. Yeah. And we don't need that. Okay, that works. All right, and then we'll change that. So if that's not equal to 0, then return. If it's not equal to 1, then return. This is going to set it to 1. And then, of course, the next step would be set it equal to 2. All right, so that's a lot better. And hopefully you understand, you get pre-patch and post-patch. Pre-patch would be stuff that needs to run before, and a lot of this junk actually would not work because like drop procedure, these don't exist the first time you run this. That's why you'll get errors the first time you run this, because these don't actually exist. So we should do some work here also, and maybe we'll do that next, and we'll clean that up. I'll have to think about that a little bit, but we got a bunch of patching. The idea is over time, when eventually you just can start removing all of this code that doesn't, once you know that everybody is up to a certain point. So anyway, that's how patching works. And that's all I got. Talk to you later.